Hello, everybody, and welcome to Holistic Emails, Email and More, a Q&A with. I'm your host, Skip Federa, and today we are talking about making your emails more interactive, more like a web experience. Now, as this is your show, we bring the experts, but it's your questions that drive the conversation. And we're doing this live. It's unscripted, it's unrehearsed, and we've got a guest who's been thrown in at the deep end because she didn't know she was going to be on as of yesterday. But it doesn't matter because we're going to have a whole lot of fun and it's going to be a great time. So before we go any further, let me just bring up the slide for our brilliant, wonderful sponsors this year. First of all, our platinum sponsor, RPE Origin. RPE Origin's team of email experts has been obsessed with email marketing for nearly 20 years. From strategy to creative to execution to data analysis, they help companies increase their email ROI through a cross-vertical data-centric approach. And our silver sponsor this year is Email Expert. Email Expert is an online community and organizer of both in-person and online events, hosting renowned conferences like the Deliverability Summit, Festival of Email, and the Martech Festival. Beyond events, Email Expert offers a comprehensive vendor directory, an industry blog, and opportunities for online tests and certificates for its members. Email Expert is committed to equipping you with the latest insights and tools to excel in your email marketing endeavors. There's a lot of great content in our back catalog. So if you're just joining us for the first time, or we say something, we reference a back story, you want to go back and check it out, then go to the website, www.holisticemailmarketing.com, click on the events menu, and go to Email More. Now you want to listen to this session, although we are recording it if you have to leave in the middle. This is your session. We put together the experts, and we've got a brilliant panel of experts with us today. Evan can't be with us. He is unwell. Told us yesterday that he didn't think he'd be able to join, but he asked his colleague, Jody Season, who's campaign developer at RP Origin, to take his place. We also have Keisha Anderson, the founder of Email Artisan. And with me, as always, is best-selling author and award-winning thought leader, Kath Pei of Holistic Email Marketing. Okay, now, as I said, this is your show. We need your questions. Our time passes too quickly. So folks, get your questions in early at the Q&A tab on the right-hand side of your screen. As many of you, especially if you're regular listeners, I've been doing this for a long time. I am old. Email is older. Email was developed in the time of mainframes. The @ sign was chosen because you were sending a message to a person at a specific terminal that they shared with lots and lots of colleagues. Now, I can remember when email could not fully support HTML. Famously, we had to create this special version of HTML text, as we called it, because AOL didn't support tables. So AOL didn't support full HTML. Unfortunately, AOL had about 50% of the US email market. So 50% of the email addresses were AOL addresses. So you had to have this version that worked for them. But very soon after that, I can remember when we could capture data in forms embedded in email. We could run JavaScript in email. We could do some really cool things. But all good things come to an end. Email became successful, and the spammers came, which caused all the email platforms to ratchet up their security and take away all of our fun toys. It was sad. For years, we walked through the desert of boring. No more, my friends. Interactivity is back with a vengeance, and we're going to talk about that today. And so to kick things off, Jody, we'll throw you right in at the deep end. Can you give me a brief example of an interactive email campaign that you found particularly effective or innovative?
I got an email from BBC's Planet Earth. So it had all this beautiful photography, an embedded video at the top, and then there were circles of animals that you could click on, and it would change the background color of the entire email. And then the bottom, you could like accordion out some information about those specific animals or specific parts of the planet. It was gorgeous. It was when I fell in love with interactive emails.
Cool. Excellent. That's a great example. Keisha, how about yourself?
Yeah, one cool one was from the campaign from Parcel Unpacked. I believe it was Mark Robbins who developed it, and he actually put a game inside the email. Very cool. I'm not much of a gamer myself, but I'm still impressed by a game in an email. And of course, with something like that, you'd have to be careful of who your audience was. But he Mark and team, I'm sure they knew that us email geeks would all eat that up. So it was pretty cool.
Kath?
Yeah, Mark Robbins, he's the one that sort of led the foray into interactive emails with CSS coding and everything. The one I'm thinking of, it's actually one of my clients, and I can't tell you their name because you'll all go and try and do it. And I don't think they'd be happy with that. It's with their card abandonment. So they use Netcore for their AMP emails. And with the card abandonment, you can actually go in and change things within the actual email. So you could say you want 2, not 1, you want to actually delete that product, so on and so on. So it's really helpful. Yeah. But Mark was, again, back in 2015, he was demonstrating that with CSS as well. So, of course, with CSS, it's different because it works, still doesn't work with Outlook.
But it will soon, right? That's my first question. Didn't I hear a rumor that Microsoft is going to stop using Word as their HTML rendering engine for Outlook, and therefore more traditional HTML stuff will work in email? Or is that just a rumor?
But
That is true from what I've seen, but it'll take time for folks to adopt it. And a lot of the versions now already have moved from using Word as the rendering engine. But yeah, we'll have to see how long it takes for the general public to adopt it.
So,
but it takes more than that, though, for this. Back in the day, actually, Outlook or Hotmail then, they were the leaders. They brought out Hotmail Active Use, right? And that was early 2000s. And because it only worked with Hotmail users, who at the time, Hotmail actually had the majority of it, but the return on investment still wasn't there for brands to actually be buying into it and to doing it. So they just caved it. So I'm not sure how eager they are to actually go back in and
that brings up a couple of interesting points. So I'm going to go, this conversation brings up 2 questions in my mind. The first one is, again, going back in the day, Kath, you and I are going to come out of this basically sounding very old. Yeah, we are old. That's true. Not you. You're still young. I'm very old. But back in the day, it was easy for an email marketer to look at their list and say, okay, I can do X, or it makes sense for me to do Y because the domain matched the rendering engine, right?
Yeah.
So the domain matched the client. But now, with regardless of the domain, you don't know in advance what's going to render the email. How does an email marketer strategically take the step back and say, yeah, it's worth exploring this? But the email geekier people on this call will say, try it because it's cool. Let's see if we can do it. Let's see if we can make it work. But those of us on the more, we got to pay for it side of email marketing, how do I, as a CMO, how do I make that call? How do I know?
I've been on both sides. I can say seeing it from getting a taste of both the strategy side as well as the technical side is a really good idea, by the way, if anyone has the opportunity to do. But what happens is there are other tools that we could use to not be as wasteful with our resources. So we can do things like test plans, use seed lists and things of that nature. Like there are tools like Validity or Kickbox that allow you to send out the seed lists to that will match your like the percentages of the domains that are in your list, and that way you can send out a test and see from that seed list what those results look like as far as whether or not they actually make it into the inbox and things of that nature. That's one part of it, obviously, but then the other side is just good old fashioned testing with tools like Litmus and Email on Acid to see how they will render in various clients. But yeah, I definitely wouldn't say just try it and see because that could be very wasteful. Definitely going through your QA process and your testing process beforehand is going to be clutch in that situation.
I totally agree.
Okay. All right. And then I guess the other question is, how do you think, Jody, we'll let you answer this one first. Do interactive elements work? And are there situations maybe where they don't work? Do they change the way that customers engage with email or engage with the content compared to a good old fashioned plain text or newsletter boring format? I say boring in the it's not cool technology, but if it works, don't if it works, don't fix it.
Yeah, I definitely think the important thing about interactivity in your emails is that it turns the content from them being a passive reader to an active taking parts in their email. So you're not just passively reading it and going through. Hopefully you'll get them to click on a button or something to get to another landing page, whereas interactivity can add so much for the immediacy and interactivity and making the person think about what they're looking at, what they're seeing. They get maybe a lot more out of it that way.
Okay.
Okay.
I'm a big believer in, if you're going to use interactivity, and I do believe that there is time and appropriate place and everything, campaigns, situations for text emails, for plain, boring HTML emails, and for interactive emails. And I think the main thing we have to understand when using interactive emails is we need to make sure that they're helpful, because that's the whole goal of it, is that they're meant to be helpful. They're meant to be assisting the customer in exploring, researching, finding out more, buying, whatever it is, that so it's easier for them and it's easier for them to convert. It's more convenient and all the rest of it. The thing is, though, is that because we're so used to emails being static and the web being interactive, not all customers realize that they can actually do anything. So say if you do have those hotspots, say you've got one big image and then you've got 4 smaller images, and you click those and then you have the image coming up and being enlarged, right? How do they know that they should be clicking that? So it's only from their own sort of curiosity. So again, along with the interactivity, there needs to be, certainly during this period where we're still bringing it in, it's not embedded at all into the email industry. We still need to
It's
give
not
them
ingrained
very
in people's behavior.
No, and we need to give them strong visual cues.
So that's a great question. How do you signpost?
I think in addition to visual cues, you can actually write instructions as well. Just the same way as with CTAs, and we are telling the reader what we want them to do, we can also do that with interactivity and say, hey, click here for more information on manatees. I mean, because you mentioned the BBC or with the animals in that, you can actually just say what you want them to do. And if I remember correctly, I think the one from Parcel Unpack had instructions on playing the game, if I remember correctly, too.
Yeah, at this stage, it's huge to not just give a visual cue, but also explicitly let them know what you want them to do. Just because, as Kath said, it's not intuitive right now for most people when they open an email that they can interact with it. In my experience right now for our clients, we like to make sure to explicitly give them instructions, tap here to learn more, or click here for RSVP, or you want to let them know explicitly what to do. And I imagine, as with most things, it will eventually get to the point where they'll be like, oh yeah, I know this. It'll just come second nature.
And then the risk averse CMO in me would have to ask, have you seen a backlash? Does interactivity make people, we've spent so much time bashing people over the heads with, don't click an email, a link in an email you don't trust. And if it doesn't look right, delete the email and blah, blah, blah. How do you prevent that backlash? How do you still engender trust in the brand and let people know, actually, this is a cool new thing. It is okay. This isn't coming from a spammer who spoofed our domain, that kind of thing.
It's being.
Go ahead, Keisha.
You go, Lisa. You go.
Okay. I haven't really seen that as being an issue, really. And I think because on the security side of things, email is still the way that like security issues happen the most. So I think we're still as inclined as we are in general to be suspicious of something, especially if we see an email that we recognize. So let's say your brand is really good at having a consistent brand. And so your emails, whether there's interactivity or not, are still going to be recognizable by your regular readers. When I see a spoofed domain in my inbox, it's some ugly email that I know that this sender didn't send. Like it's one big image in a square that's not even 600 pixels wide.
Right.
It's clearly not
Spammers aren't going to go to all
from
that trouble.
yeah, they're not great at email design. So you can tell almost right away that okay, this is not typical of the brand that I'm looking for this to come from. One that like a lot of the retail emails are really beautiful. There are a lot of images, but you can still see that it's designed appropriately most of the time. And I think as long as you have a consistent brand within your email design and within the user experience in your email, even if you are introducing something new like interactivity, if you're doing that properly, you're not going from this end of your brand all the way to that end of your brand when adding something so new like that in there. So I think as long as you're taking baby steps away from your regular static emails and including an interactive element, but still keeping your brand consistent, you really shouldn't have problems.
I think that's spot on, Keisha. I think back to the days when Abercrombie and Fitch would not send an email that was anything other than an image. They just wouldn't. And everybody said, that's not best practice. That's going to get blocked, blah, blah, blah. And they were quite open about the fact that, no, we tested it. This is what our audience wants. This is what works better for us. Damn the torpedoes, straight on ahead. And I think you're right. If going back to the point we were making earlier, is if you're testing the elements to make sure that they work well, and if they don't work well, they degrade well, and so it's not damaging your brand, then you don't need to build trust. There's already trust there. Excellent. We have some questions from the audience. So this one's from Jay. Jay asks, what campaigns or examples have you sent? If you don't want to give sent, you could obviously give us a case study that's really performed well. How can you back that up with reporting? And I want to actually get into the reporting. What kind of reporting should we be doing when it comes to interactive emails? Should we change that? Kath, since this is a high-level strategic one, you want to start with that one?
What campaigns or examples have you sent that have really performed well? So that one, we weren't involved in this campaign with our client with regards to that cart abandonment one. But I do have again, I don't want to give the actual results, but it gave a significant uplift on their regular cart abandonment even. And again, that just comes from the ease of use. And of course, they've got the fallback in place for those that actually don't get it because they were using AMP for email. So only Gmail users and Yahoo users actually get the interactive one. And that's where it can get a little bit tricky as far as the reporting goes. But when you're using a system like Netcall, who has it already sorted, it's really easy to use. It's easy to create and develop the actual interactive modules and elements and everything. And then it's also easy to report. I haven't done that on the CSS. I haven't done that for a client, so I can't report on that side of things. But definitely when you're using a system that's already got this all planned, and there is a few out there, there's not many, but there's a few out there that can enable you to do it, then yeah, it's easy to do. But that's because they've done all the hard work.
Ultimately as well is just like any other email, it's going to be what your main key performance indicator for that particular email is, right? So if it's a retail email that's going out and your main KPI is revenue incurred from or incremental revenue from this email, you're going to be looking at the same thing. And of course, to see whether or not the interactivity had anything to do with it, you would have to run a test on that, right? So you might have a test where it's either this group clearly has the interactivity and this group doesn't, or like the interactivity versus what your fallback was on that interactivity. But I think it would be better to actually divide it between interactivity and not interactivity. That way you have more control over your testing situation. But I think it should still be whatever your KPIs are for that email and whether there's incremental lift that can be proven to have taken place because of the interactivity.
And that, Keisha, jumps us right into the next question from Christopher Casey about justifying the additional expense incurred for adding the interactivity, not the inactivity. That's not what you want. Versus a good old fashioned button for a CTA. This it's specifically about email interactivity, but I used to work with a shoe brand that was a pan-European shoe brand, and they spent a good 8 months or so creating localizing their website into the 6 markets where they sold shoes. And that meant that they had 6 versions of the email and 6 versions of their banner ads and 6 versions of everything. And every time that, because it was all tied to one system, if they uploaded stock, they didn't have to upload it 6 times, but they did have to have 6 descriptions, because one for each language. And they ran that for a year. And then we were having our normal QBR one day, and they're like, "Oh, we're canning that." And what they found out was they thought that they would sell more by working in local languages. And whilst they did see an uplift, a little one, it wasn't enough to justify the incremental cost. So I think back to what you were saying and Christopher's question, test it, and probably test it first. What they should have done is they should have tested it in a market rather than in all markets to see if the uplift was going to justify the incremental cost.
That's interesting. It just shows how important it is to test. It seems like that would almost be a given that if you're using the native language, that would be better, but that's the bride.
There's probably a brand position to take on that too, around meeting customers where they are versus not meeting customers where they are, and where does that sit within your brand. But for them, they were spending it just from a pure business perspective, it just didn't pay off. I think you're right. I think that does really highlight the importance of testing something, piloting something first in a limited way, understanding what the impacts can be before jumping in with both feet and spending a lot of money that you don't need to.
So, in regards to Christopher's question about how you justify their additional expense, so I think it all comes back down to what is your objective with that particular email and what elements, what kind of interactivity are you looking at implementing? So, for example, let's take 2. So, one of them could be simply those hotspots. And so the aim with that is another way of doing it, which isn't interactive, but it still is. You could be animated GIF or something like that to show them, or maybe even a carousel using CSS to give a carousel. It gives them more information, which makes them more likely to click to then go on and convert. It's just, are you giving them enough information, or how can you use interactivity to help them, to give them a lot more information so that they can make that decision to click and then hopefully go through and convert, right? But cart abandonment one. And that is, you actually achieve the conversion inside. So what that means is that instead of taking them on a 3-step process, you're doing it all right there and then. I wouldn't necessarily say 1 step because you still have to do multiple clicks, but it's happening right there. So that's what the difference is. And are you doing it to help them to then make sure that the conversion, to increase the chances of the conversion happening on the landing page a few steps down the track, or actually trying to reduce the number of steps and trying to keep them there so that they don't get waylaid along the way?
I think that the other 2 aspects to that are, if you're selling hand sand, interactivity may or may not help. If you're selling something a little bit more complicated, something that requires a little bit more research, or it's a little bit more ego involving in terms of the purchase, then you might also want to start looking at time to sale. Are you speeding up the time to sale? Are you shortening that process? And then look at average order values. So, Keisha, you were talking about out and out revenue, But if you look at what was the revenue per customer, actually, because then you get into the revenue was about the same, but the revenue per customer was 10% more. Okay, so that it's worth testing. Can we get the number back up to where we were? Now all of a sudden we've just made 10% more revenue off that kind of activity.
And speaking of that, I realized that with Jay's question, we didn't touch on like examples that had performed well. So speaking of what you were saying, Skip, as far as like looking at metrics such as that have to do with like life cycle and that, right? Or like time to purchase and average order value and all that. I think what I've seen too, especially in the retail space, is examples of interactivity that helps the reader make a decision. For instance, if it's holiday time, I've seen gift guides emails helping them to narrow down. Because if you're going onto a website and it's like everything that you could possibly purchase from this particular brand, or you're receiving an email that says, who are you looking to purchase for this holiday season? And they're helping you to start narrowing down your decisions that you're making, that could drive you to purchase faster, that could drive you to make a decision faster as well. So those are things that I've seen that have performed well as well. Who are you purchasing for? Your mom, sister, brother, husband, wife, whatever. And then that takes you to a section on the website that was made specifically to interact with this particular email. And now you're 10 steps closer to making a decision than you would have been if it was just, hey, see what we've got going on.
All this stuff.
Exactly. Now you've got decision fatigue and you don't know who you're purchasing for and what you're purchasing for them. But if you've got some interactivity email that allows you to make those decisions before you reach the site, and then the site has some sort of guide for you to follow along with in order to purchase for this person, now you've aided that customer making a decision and getting faster to that purchase, and perhaps leading to a larger average order value or whatever it is your KPI might be.
Yeah, years ago, there was a J.Crew example where J.Crew sent out an email to all of its women subscribers. The message was, are you embarrassed by going out with your boyfriend? Here's some clothes for him. Dress him. You could totally make that super interactive. So Jody, I want to throw this next question over to you. And this is from Chris Sledge. And we got two that are in a similar vein, but I think Chris is the good one to start with. So what are some easy ways to start making your emails more interactive? Chris is currently testing quizzes and has seen a boost in engagement. I want to dip my toe in the water. Where should I start?
I am not our main coder. I do a little coding, so I don't want to be inaccurate about what I'm saying, but my understanding is that not all interactivity has to be based on just the AMP. There is a bit you can do with the CSS. I know we do carousels, we do gamification. We also do the hotspots and the accordion. We can do all of those things without getting into the AMP. And of course, those are going to only be for Apple and iOS customers. That's where that kind of interactivity will show.
Okay, because there's a lot of them.
Yeah, there's a lot of them. And it's a good way to get into it because you don't have the extra cost of either learning the AMP, or I know for AMP, you have to have one email that's just straight HTML for the fallback, and then you have to add in all the interactivity. It's a slightly higher cost lift than just doing it with the CSS. So my suggestion would be to get in starting something like that, probably a carousel or something simple that you can dip your toes in and see if it's good for your clients. Test to make sure that it actually is doing a lift for you. That would be my suggestion.
So small.
Start small, for sure.
Yeah, I would agree. Start small, experiment. You might find out that the CSS is all that you need. But if you want to do more interactivity and start actually completing the full journey within the email, then you might want to look at the AMP for email. But that is more of a time investment and everything. You have to get whitelisted with Google. And so it's a bit more of a process. So you probably don't want to do that first. You want to make sure that it's right for your brand, it's right for your audience, that interactivity, that you've got some use cases that would really work. and that you have built up a bit of a business case using your CSS, and you can start to do it that way. So I would definitely be doing it just small and dip your foot in, check out the metrics, see if it works, and understand your audience. See if you can train them.
We're not supposed to
I
train
think it
audiences, Kath. That's bad.
I think it depends on your resources too, like what you have at your disposal to be able to invest. So that could be if you don't have the skills in house to learn those skills or to bring on an agency that helps you who's already versed in those skills so that you can run a test right away before you're investing more into your own team, into yourself, or into your company. But if you have the resources, and for instance, depending on what you've seen, like maybe competitors, other people in your space do, and see what works. That may or may not be a case to actually jump further along versus taking smaller steps. But again, if you're more risk averse, you may want to, as everyone else has said, start small. Either your team already has the skills and you can just start using them, or your team might have to gain those skills, or you might have to go outside of your team and bring on a contractor or an agency. You can also bring on a third party tool. I know that tools like Movable Ink make it easier to achieve some of the interactivity in emails, where you can make sure that things are done properly and personalize things and make things dynamic as necessary. But there are a lot of different ways to get started. I think it depends mostly on what resources you have at your disposal. A resource that you may not have is time. So it might be better to actually bring someone else in to take care of it for you. I think it again depends on the resources that you have at your disposal.
Excellent. Excellent. Those were all really good tips. And Jesse, I hope that answered your question as well. We've got an interesting question here from Slovenia. Kath, I'm going to ask you. It might actually be a question that we want to pick up in a future episode rather than trying to deal with it here. But it's an interesting one. And I had a very interesting conversation. So I was at a developer conference last Friday. Interestingly, none of them had iPhones, pretty much. They were all very hardcore, no, Android. But I got into a really fascinating discussion with a couple of people around the sustainability of AI. And I know that's not Slovenia's specific question, but they were talking about right now, so many people are using AI and not using it well, and you're chunking through a lot of electricity and a lot of water and a lot of stuff. Slovenia is asking, and I'll throw it up on stage here, if we've got any experience incorporating sustainability related email metrics, factoring the environmental impact of the extra computing power needed in an interactive email. Are there other factors that go into it that maybe we should consider, especially for a business that is running on really strong environmental credentials? We may want to think, maybe we shouldn't get into this.
I've not had any experience with this at all. Sorry.
I can remember, and Kath, you'll probably remember this, years and years ago, the DMA was doing an environmental impact study, and they were like, email has no environmental impact. And we're like, it does a lot. But at the time, relative to everything else, it didn't really, right? Because it was still way more environmentally friendly than a direct mail piece. That's an interesting question, but I think we're gonna have to defer that one for today. Now,
I have a couple cents on it. With email, the effect that it has environmentally is the weight of it and the storage of it and the power that it takes to store those emails. If it's something that is going to be a heavier email than a static email, then that would have a more substantial environmental effect. But I think that there are ways to balance that out, right? So if you think that it would be really advantageous to your business to include interactivity in the email, then maybe you just want to cut everything else down if it makes sense business wise and sustainability wise to go that route. But I think you'll have to, like with most things, just balance it out and say, okay, maybe we'll have to cut back on this to make sure that the size of the email is still as comparable to what our other emails are, if that's possible. So that's not something that I've done myself, but just understanding the sustainability factor of email and how that works, you might want to look at that, just the weight of the email and whether or not it's the interactivity elements that you're using are bloating the email. And because you also have things like interactivity, and I'm sure they're using AMP for this because it's Google emails. Like when you're sending something that has to do with a Google Doc or a Google spreadsheet, and those things are changing within the email, that I that's what you would need to do, is to see how heavy that is and see if it's you can scale back that particular email to make it more comparable to the other emails that you're sending.
Yeah,
Yeah,
let's bring it
I was just going to say,
let's
sort of
bring it back.
brought that in
Go ahead,
is
Kat.
just the expiration date as well. So there is a push for sustainability and everything for the expiration date to be put in the emails, and then the emails implode. No, they don't.
If you don't enter this code every 47 seconds or 47 minutes or whatever it was, this email will self-destruct.
Yeah.
This touches on something else that I find quite interesting, and that is around unintended consequences. How do you, or how should you, or how should our listeners ensure that the interactive emails are still user friendly? Obviously, if they're not user friendly, they won't generate interactivity. How do we keep from overwhelming people? Do they work with e-readers? How do we make sure that what we're sending out is appropriate for people who are neurodivergent? All of those kinds of other considerations that are maybe a little bit easier to deal with when you're looking at a static email versus something a bit more interactive and complicated.
I feel that interactive emails are still one of the unknown, right? We are all on our seats going, yes, how awesome, how wonderful, because it's the geeky part of us, it's the marketing, it's the strategic. I love them for the strategic side of things. If I can make someone's journey easier and quicker and everything, then I'm all for it. But at the same time, I can remember Mark Robbins coming in and wowing us all back in 2015, 2016 with his, or this is what you can do. And we were just going, wow, email's going to change. How amazing. Has it changed? No. That's because the majority of us are still, we don't know what to do. We still don't do it. We're still trying to get budget for it, approval for it, because of all of these unknowns. Unfortunately, it's not mainstream enough for us to be able to, individual brands who have gone and implemented, they'd probably be able to answer all of your questions there. But again, that will be specific to them and their experience. I don't think everyone's going to have the same experience. I don't think everyone's going to have the same answers. It's all going to be, no brand is alike, no products are alike, no audience are alike, and all the rest of it. So I think it really is a case of, for each brand still to work out, is it something that's for them, and put a bit of a business case together and do a small little one as a test, see how it goes.
I guess from what everybody has said so far, no one interactive solution works across the board, right? AMP works on Gmail or in Google. CSS works on iPhone or in Apple devices. Neither one works on the other. So at the end of the day, you have to have something that is degradable, right? If the interactivity isn't going to work, you've got to have a good backup
For sure.
as part of a multi-part email. Is that, do I have that right?
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead, Jody.
I was just going to say, at RPE, we like to think of it as interactive acceleration. So we start everything with the baseline HTML email, make sure that is going to get your message across for everybody, and then add in the interactivity where we can and where it will enhance things, but make sure that you have that bulletproof message just in plain HTML. You want to make sure everybody gets the message, and then where you can, you add in the interactivity to enhance it for those who can see it.
Okay. The reason I was asking the question, or the reason I asked the question the way I did, even though it clearly showed that the last time I looked at email technology was sometime in the early 2000s when Yahoo was still relevant, is that in theory, you could create a situation where people could turn it off, right? I don't want the interactivity because of all the reasons I said before. That is a possibility, right? Where the recipient could turn it off.
It happened with HTML, didn't it? There's a whole bunch of people who say, I don't want HTML, I don't want images, I just want plain text emails. They did that. They turned.
But there are also a lot of people that clean out their inbox every day.
I know. And my best friend's one of them.
Who are these people? I don't know them.
How can he be
It
my
takes a
best
village.
friend?
Keisha's going to tell us that she's a zero inbox person.
I tried
Oh, fair enough.
longer than I was actually doing it. So
I don't know why I had never thought of this. A friend of mine who's not in email marketing said to me the other day, "Oh, I just came up with this great way to clear out my inbox." I was like, "Oh, what's that?" I searched on the word unsubscribe and deleted every email that had the word unsubscribe in it. And I'm like, "Oh, I don't like that. That doesn't make me feel good." So we're coming up on our time. I guess as a way to wrap up, I'm going to combine two questions into one. And Keisha, why don't we start with you on this one? Where do you see interactivity in email going? So what should we be looking for in the next few years? But also, I'm just getting started. What should I do first?
it's hard to say because it's been moving so slow already. So like it's not going to go very far. I do still think that it's most relevant and you can be the most creative in retail emails, e-commerce emails, just because it's products. You could use a carousel to look at different outfits in an email or something like that. And perhaps with educational emails, like you were saying, Jody, with the BBC email, the hotspots. Um, and of course, email geeks like us, if you're sending us stuff, you would probably be the talk of the email geek group chat if you're sending cool interactive emails to us, just because it's been moving so slow already. But I would expect to see more happening in retail before anywhere else, just because the use cases there are just aplenty, basically. And where to start? I would say that's going to depend on such a marketer answer, right? It's going to depend on who your audience is, what it is that you're communicating with them about. It may not be relevant for you and your audience, but if it is, you still want to use what's most relevant. Like some other folks on the panel were saying, you don't want to just put interactivity in an email just to do it, just to say you did it, just to have a cool email. Is it relevant to your audience? Is it going to enhance your audience's experience with you? And then go from there. And just as Jody was saying, their methodology at RP Origin is to just add a little bit on top of what is already a great email, right? And start from there. But also, if you're just starting out, make sure you're testing it against BAU or business as usual emails to see if it even makes sense for you to go that route and to dump those extra resources in that area. But definitely just make sure you're keeping your audience in mind and making sure that whatever it is that you're trying, whether it's interactivity or anything else, make sure that you're testing it and make sure that it's relevant to your audience and it actually enhances their experience with you versus like sending out broken things for no reason because it's not relevant to them.
Sending
Just keep
out
it
broken
relevant is what I
things.
would say. With
My
interactivity, your chances of sending out a broken email are already heightened. I would say just make sure it's relevant, it's worth the risk, and you're testing thoroughly.
I gotta say, my takeaways so far from today are: don't send out broken things, and spammers are bad email designers. So, Jody, Keisha gave a really comprehensive answer to that question, and I think it'd be unfair for me to ask you the same question. So I'm going to change up the question slightly for you. So instead of where do you think things are going to go, what would you like to see from interactive email in the next few years? And is that knowing what RPE Origin does as well as I do, a client calls you and says, Jody, my boss just came back from a conference and they were talking about interactive email. My boss wants us to start with interactive email in the next campaign. So where do you want to see interactive email go? And what do you say to the client when they're getting pressure to do something that maybe isn't the right thing to do?
Okay, first part of that question, where do I want to see it go? Big thing for me is I would like to see it be renderable across more email clients. If we could do it in all email clients, everyone could see it, it would be far more valuable. It's valuable enough as is, but if we didn't have to worry about sending out broken emails, it would be that much more valuable. So I would definitely like to see more email clients be able to render it.
Okay. And how do you come back? And Ryan, I do apologize for pointing out that you do like to speak at conferences and you give people great ideas.
If my boss
Yeah.
were pressuring me to try something new, that's good because they're not sticking us in a box of this is all you can do. We should be experimenting. It's going to move our brand forward. But as other panelists have mentioned, we want to make sure that we don't just add interactivity for the sake of interactivity. It's got to enhance the message you're sending. It's got to be relevant to what you're trying to get across, to what action you want them to take. And honestly, with all things email test, I would do the smallest amount of interactivity I could that enhanced the message that I'm trying to get across. And then I would personally just test that. I would A/B test it against one with no interactivity just to see what the lift is. If it's a big enough to justify the expense of adding in the interactivity, whether we have to, as Keisha said, hire a third party person or learn to do it ourselves, then
Get a
yes,
new tool, whatever.
implement it. Yeah. But if your tests show no results or small results, maybe it's not worth it. You need to justify that with your own budget and brand and what you're trying to do.
Thank you, Jody. Any last thoughts from you?
Yeah, I'll try and sum it up really quick. We're in a catch-22 situation, okay? So we as marketers want to use it. The actual consumers are showing by their actions, by the uplift in results, that they're actually keen on it as well. But we need more of it. It's only in the minority. So therefore, we need more of it so that the ISPs, those email clients, are actually seeing that this is valuable, because at the end of the day, all of our clients are actually their clients, right? So they're the ones that have got the Gmail account, the Outlook account, the Yahoo account, and all the rest of it. So they're wanting to give their clients what they want. So at the end of the day, it's a consumer that ends up making the changes. If there is a demand there for it, a need for it, then they will make those changes. And then that's when we'll get it across all of the email clients. But at the moment, so few of us are doing it. And then there's even things like, or Google's talking about saying we're going to stop doing for Gmail. We start going, is it worth it? So it ends up being this, is it the chicken and the egg, catch-22, whatever. And that's where
Rock
the
and hard
problem is.
place.
So we have to all join in and start doing it, or to say it was a good idea, but it's not going to happen.
Or go back to the desert of boredom. Thanks, Kath. That is all we have time for this week. I want to thank our speakers. Jody, thanks for stepping in for Evan last minute. Keisha, great to have you as always. And Kath, thank you so much. Also, we couldn't do this without our sponsors, in addition to our platinum sponsor, RP Origin, and our silver sponsor, Email Expert. We also have silver sponsor, Sino. Our friends at Sino have built an amazing email analytics platform that will enable you to explore and benchmark your email campaigns like never before. Their intuitive platform makes dealing with data feel like a friendly chat, not a complicated puzzle. And our gold sponsor, Bouncer. Now, Bouncer is an email verification and deliverability platform with super powerful tech and caring people behind it. Use Bouncer to increase your email marketing ROI and land smoothly in your recipient's inbox. Now, Kath and I will be back on August 20th for our next chat about the holiday season. Enjoy the rest of your July and your early August. If you're going on holiday, have a great time. Until next time, be safe and make good choices.